Hi, my name is Julia. I'm a NUA illustration graduate and I'm going to be teaching you some monoprinting techniques. I am an illustrator and printmaker and I work at an art collective called Site Collective. We do pop-up shops, exhibitions and drink and draws. And now during the quarantine we have been doing online drink and draws. You can join us if you want. Our details are on our Facebook page under Site Collective. Monoprinting is a very simple printmaking technique that you can do from home. It consists of transferring impressions from one paper to another, making a one-of-a-kind print each time. It is also a great way of getting an introduction to printmaking without the compromise of needing very expensive tools or equipment or any experience. Moving on to materials, I will be using some paper. This is some Xerox printing paper that's recycled. Then some acrylic paint, a flat surface to extend your paint. I'm going to be using this plastic sheet. If you don't have one, you can use a paper plate or a mirror. To roll out your ink, I'm going to be using some rollers. If you don't have one, you can always use a brush. And finally, some cut out bits of paper and fonts to make some funky shapes. For the first exercise, all that you're going to need is 2 sheets of paper, your paint and a pencil. So we're going to start by rolling out some paint and putting it on one side of the paper, and then that's going to be facing down on top of your other paper. Then what you're going to do is draw on top of it to transfer an image. Let's get started by rolling some paint. You might find it a bit tricky at first, finding the balance of how much thickness you want in your page. If you don't put enough paint, your pages will probably dry and stick together and then you can't undo it. So feel free to keep on practicing rolling your ink before you start printing. So now that you have your roller coated with your paint, you're going to start by coating one of the pages with your paint. Remember to be generous. It doesn't have to be completely even, but you don't want your pages to dry together. I actually learned this technique in my first year of illustration at NUA. And you can experiment as much as you want. There's really no boundaries. Now that your page is nice and coated, you're going to be placing it right on top of a clean sheet of paper. And without pressing, you're going to start drawing a painting with your pencil. I'm going to be doing some leaves and a flower. Now you unfold it, and there you go. Now you have your 2 prints. You have your positive print. It is positive because you have added on paint to it. And then you have your negative print, and it is negative because you have subtracted paint from it. And these 2 are one of a kind. You can never recreate it, which is the magic of monoprinting. Here are some of the outcomes that I've done doing this technique. On the top row you can see all of the negative prints, and at the bottom row all of the positive. What I really like about this technique is that you never know what the outcome is going to be, so it forces you not to be very precious about your work, which is something that I struggle. Some other fun things that you can do is try and do a portrait with a continuous line. You can also use these as a background for your other illustrations, your lino prints or your screen prints, which gives it a really nice edge. Next, we're going to start our second exercise. We're going to be doing the same. We're going to be coating one side of the paper and leaving another paper blank, but this time we're going to be placing leaves and cutout shapes of paper in between to block the paint from going through, kind of like a stencil. I have pre-rolled my ink and I'm going to start by creating the composition on my bottom paper. So I'm going to be using some leaves from my backyard garden. When working with 3D objects, bear in mind they are never probably going to look exactly the same because they're not fully flat, but I think that adds some beauty to it. Now that we have our composition on our bottom paper, we're going to be rolling some ink on our top paper. Now that you have your rolled paint, you're going to be placing it right on top of your bottom paper with your composition already prepared. And this time you're going to take a clean roller. If you don't have one, you can use a book to apply pressure and start rolling over to transfer the ink from the top paper to the bottom. There you go. So here you have our final outcome from this exercise. As you can see, because the plant had some volume, the paint didn't go through it perfectly, but it managed to smudge in through the edges, which I think creates a really lovely texture that adds to your piece. Sometimes your pieces of paper or plants will get stuck to your paper, to your print. You can use one of these to wiggle it out, and then you're done. Now I'm going to show you some more examples that I've done with this technique. Here are some of my final outcomes with this exercise number 2. In this one that I just did, I used some plants from my backyard garden and a cut out piece of cardboard. In this one, this is just cut out pieces of paper. And this is a mix. Here's a little bit of a plant. There's a little bit of a string that I found around my house and some paper as well. Fun thing about this technique is that you can get as creative as you want with the objects that you put in between your papers. You can always re-peel them, and if they're still sticky from the paint, you can go ahead and make a print with that. Really, there's no boundaries, which makes it really fun. For our last exercise, we're going to be doing the same process as we did for exercise number 2, but this time we're going to be coating our pieces of cut out shapes of card with paint to add a pop of color to our print. It is very important that you cover the shiny part with your paint, because if you cover the matte side of the paper, it sticks to the page and it dries. It sticks to the paint, sorry, and it dries, and it will ruin your print. So I'm gonna start by rolling out some ink, and let's get started. let's cover our cut up pieces of paper, of cards, shiny part first. Remember to work fast with this technique so that your pieces don't stick to the page. And let's roll our ink for the top page. Now that you have your two pages ready, we're going to go ahead and place one on top of the other gently. And roll over with your clean roller or your book, applying even pressure. Here is our print. You're going to, with one of these, wiggle out your shapes. There you go. As you can see, I applied a little bit too much paint on my cutout pieces and it smudged out a little bit, but I think it creates a nice fade out and texture. But if you practice a little bit, you probably will find the right balance. So these are some of my final examples from this workshop. One of my favorite things about monoprinting is the lovely textures that you get from the paint. It's really organic and it creates a one-of-a-kind print. For exercise number 1, some things that you can keep on adding is experimenting with different tools such as a fork or a spoon or anything that will make a really fun mark. For exercise number 2, you can use any sort of object that you can find around your house that is flat and it has a fun texture, such as a mesh net from your onions, for example. That will create a really fun stencil. As well as in the bits where you have white spaces, you can go back in and draw, such as like a background or objects or anything that you like. I hope that you found this video informative and that you had fun. I'm really glad that I got to show you some of my printmaking techniques, and thank you to Anyway for that. I hope you're all staying safe and you are having a good lockdown, as good as that can be, and enjoy printing. Thank you.